Okay, hey y'all, Miss A's trying to fix the camera again so y'all can see. I can't do this. Y'all can fast forward through this until I get it together. Okay, here we go. All right, so today we are going to do some practice on interpreting slope and y-intercept. Before we begin, watch what I do and y'all do it too. It's magical. Just watch. Y'all ready? I'm gonna write my name on the paper. Let me let y'all see. I'm gonna write my name on the paper. Miss Abudabanja. Period. I'm gonna say 1000. You put your period. And my team name, you're either Team Honest, Team Power, Team Magic, or Team Love. I'm Team Teacher Squad. Whoop whoop. All right. So interpreting slope and y-intercept. So our goals for today, the first goal is to find the slope and y-intercept from a graph. We've been working on that if you've been in my small group, so we should be pretty okay with that, especially finding the slope from a graph. The next thing is we're going to write that equation. So once we have slope and y-intercept, it's very easy to write the equation. Then we're going to interpret, okay, so what does that slope mean and what does that y-intercept mean? Because we're using real world situations. But before we do that, let's define some words. So we have a couple definitions. First one is slope-intercept form. All that is that equation we've been looking at, y equals mx plus b. All right, y equals mx plus b. Make sure you write that on your paper. All right, you're writing what I write. My m, y'all already know, is the slope. And we know slope is rise over run, rate of change, and change in y over change in x. Y'all see that? Cool. My b is my y-intercept. That's what we're calling it. And it's in parentheses, I'm going to say where line crosses the y-axis. It's also when x equals 0. And you'll see what I'm talking about in a second. All right? So we should have that. If you don't have that, pause and write, but write quickly. All right? So now we're going down to our first problem. And all of this is going to come together. So Miss Abudabanja is trying to save money. The graph to the right shows how much money she saved over several weeks. Find the equation of the line and interpret the slope and y-intercept. So I have to write an equation like this, but I have to plug in for my slope and plug in for my y-intercept. So first thing it's asking me to find is m. So I can find m or b first. Let's start with b, honestly, because it's just easier to see. So first thing I want us to notice is that on my x-axis, I have time, right? On my x-axis is time. On my y-axis is amount of money. So as time is increasing, my amount of money is also increasing. So as the amount of weeks go by, the money I have saved up is also increasing. So as this goes up, as x increases, so does y. All right, so back to my y-intercept, my b. So as we defined, y-intercept is where your line crosses the y-axis. It's also when x equals 0. So my line crosses the y-axis at this point right here. This is where they intersect. That point is 30. So I'm going to write 30 down. It's also, this point right here is 0. X is 0 here. When x is 0, y is 30. All right? So that's what my y-intercept is. Now I got to find my slope. You know, in order to find my slope, we said it's rise over run, which is the same thing as rate of change, changing y over change in x. We're going to use rise over run to help us understand it. So I have a point here, and I'm going to use my y-intercept point as well. I create a slope triangle. So you would think it's 2, but it's not 2. My rise is not 2. Let me zoom in. My rise is not 2. My rise goes from 30 to 40. So my rise is actually 10. So I'm going to say 10. My run goes from 0. Oops. I'm going to say 10. Because I go from 30 to 40. My run goes from 0 here to 2. So my run is 2. And we know M. Did you see that? All right, so let me back out. So my M is now rise, which is 10, over run. Rise over run. And that is 5. 10 over 2 is 5. Okay? So my equation, we know an equation is y equals mx plus b. I have to plug in for m and for b. So my equation is y equals, my m is 5, 5x plus b. My b is 30. Cool. Now we're going to go to interpret the slope. We have to interpret, what does the slope mean in the context of this problem, right? What does slope mean in the context of this problem? Slope is always going to be something per something else. We're going to set it up as, on the bottom right here, on the bottom, I want you to write where we're at. Write it as. So, slope. So, the slope number you got is going to represent whatever your y is per whatever your x is. Y per x. So my y is money, right? So my slope means, so my slope is 5. So 5, my y is dollars. Dollars per, y'all see that? Per, and x is weeks. X is weeks per week. So I'm going to use my slope number. If you see my slope number, I said my slope is 5. So that means I'm going to hit 5, whatever my y represents. So it's dollars per week. Now, what does my y-intercept represent? So at 0 weeks, I have $30. So that means my B means at 0 weeks, Miss A has $30. That's my starting amount. That's how much money I start with. So you can also say Miss A starts with $30. All right? So we just finished that front sheet. We are going to do 2 more examples, and then you are going to go and practice on your own. All right? So here's one. So Miss Henley and Miss A are in an elevator at the top of a tall building. So we in the elevator, we chilling. But then we realize, okay, we got to go down. So we click the down button and the elevator starts moving. We have to find the equation of the line and interpret the slope and y-intercept. So doing exactly what we did on the last problem. So as you remember, slope is rise over run, and my B is where my line crosses my x-axis. If you remember here, I started by finding my B because it was easier, right? It's where my line crossed my y-axis. So let's start with finding B here. So my B is right here. It crosses at, this line intersects y-axis at 20, right here. So my B is 20. Okay, knowing that X is time and floor number. So as time goes on, the floor that we're on decreases because we're going down the elevator. And this is important because when I look at my slope is going to be negative because I'm going down. So I know my slope is negative because I'm going down. So I'm going to write a negative there to make me remember. So now I'm going to do rise over run. I'm going to pick a point. So I have my y-intercept point. I'm going to choose this point right here. Remember, it doesn't matter which point you choose. I create my slope triangle. So to go from 16 to 20, that's 4, right? It's a rise of 4. To go from 0 to this number is 4 is 4. So if my rise is 4 and my run is 4, that's just 4 over 4, which is 1. So my m is -1. -1. All right? So my equation, we said, is y equals mx plus b. So my equation, y equals m is -1. -1x plus b is 20. So we're going to interpret the slope and the y-intercept. So we said slope is always going to be your slope number, and then it's always going to be your slope number y per x. So my slope number is -1. So -1 floors, because that's y, floors per second, which means each second I'm going down 1 floor. If you want to make it seem, because no one says -1 floors per second. So you can say each second down 1 floor. All right, that's just another way of saying it. So interpret the Y-intercept. So at 0 seconds, Miss Henley and Miss A are starting at floor 20. So Miss A and Miss Henley start at floor 20. That's all that means. All right, so we're gonna do one more together and then you're off on your own. So Derek is going on a trip. He starts off with some gas in his tank, and as he drives, the tank empties. So we can see that, right? As more miles, so he starts somewhere, and as more miles go on, his tank is getting emptier. So my slope, just like this slope going down, is going to be negative. So let me go ahead and put a negative on my M. All right, so let's find my B first, because it's always easier. So my B is where my line intersects my y-axis, also where x is 0. And that is 15. My line is crossing my y-axis. That's where they intersect each other. So my B is 15. All right, my slope, I'm going to use rise over run. So from 14 to 15 is 1. And then this, pay attention, this bottom part, my run is not 1. I go from 0 to 25. So my run is 25. So my slope is actually -1 over 25. My equation, we said, is y equals mx plus b. You plug in for m and for b. Y equals -1 over 25x plus 15, my b. So let's interpret that. We said slope is your slope number, -1 over 25. Gallons, your y, whatever your y represents, per mile. So I'm essentially losing something, right? I'm losing 1/25 gallons per mile. Now interpret the Y-intercept. When Derek started driving, he had 15 gallons. That's what it means. Derek started with 15 gallons. All right, so now hopefully this video made sense. If not, good luck. I'm just kidding. I'm here to help. Go ahead and try that on your own on the next sheet. All right, see y'all later.